Welcome to the news on NTA International. I am Frama Pani and my sign language interpreter is John Bamidele. Let's begin with the headlines. President Tinubu woos investors, particularly Nigerians in diaspora, to come home and invest. INEC chairman appeals to National Assembly to expedite action on amendment of Electoral Act 2022. Plus, Malawi faces severe economic crisis marked by high inflation, food insecurity, and a persistent shortage of foreign currency. President Bola Tinubu has continued his drive to woo investors, particularly Nigerians in diaspora, to come home and invest for the growth of the country's economy. President Tinubu received two Nigerian global investment leaders, Chief Executive Officer Global Infrastructure Partners Bayo Ogunlesi and Chairman Metis Capital Partners Hakim Bello Osage, who is also a senior lecturer Harvard Business School, at his Lagos residence, with discussions centered on upstream oil and gas as well as large-scale infrastructure investment. The president reaffirmed Nigeria's readiness to partner with leading global investors for sustainable growth and prosperity as part of his renewed hope agenda. The investors, who were led to the meeting by the chairman of the National Revenue Service, Zach Adedeji, spoke to State House correspondents afterwards and indicated interest of investment in aviation and port sectors.
To expect, he was very encouraging of international investments in Nigeria.
Okay, I'm not expecting you to tell me how that you told the president, but what sector particularly are you interested in?
Yeah, but you think about all the sectors that we invest in. Energy. So we invest in energy. We're building LNG plants in Texas. We're building LNG plants in Australia. There's gas in Nigeria. Nigeria is a huge gas province. People describe me as the guy who bought Gatwick Airport. I didn't personally buy Gatwick Airport, but the aviation sector is also an area of interest to us. I confess to Mr. President that one of our companies has ports in Cotonou, and it has a port in Lomé, none in Nigeria. So I asked for his forgiveness and understanding, and being the gentleman that he was, he forgave me, but said, you have to bring port investment to Nigeria. So that's another area we're looking at. Renewables, that's another area. So lots of investment opportunities in Nigeria. You just have to be serious about making the right moves.
I think when Nigerians in Nigeria and when Nigerians in the diaspora invest in Nigeria, it can only be a great signal for the international community to invest in us and make our country greater.
They commended the president's reforms, which they say have positioned Nigeria for economic growth.
We have a refinery that's operating and exporting aviation fuel, unification of the road ownership system. And so the next step is, how do we encourage international investment in Nigeria to drive economic growth?
We thank President Tinubu for his policies. They have made Nigeria investable. We wish him all the very best, and we give every assurance to the president and every assurance to the Nigerian people that we will do our very best and it will create a fast-growing Nigeria which will achieve its objectives.
Our president has done fundamental reform, and that reform on its own invited all these people that you are saying. We've done the fundamental. The next thing for us is to lead export-led economy, and they have committed. Mr. President has given them go ahead, and the only thing I can say is the hope is very on rise.
An endowment fund that will support the maintenance and running of the newly completed National Theatre, now named the Wole Soyinka Center for Culture and Creative Arts, will be created. The renovated iconic structure is set to be a massive platform to stimulate growth in the creative industry. Amaka Owo reports that this was stated by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the inauguration of the completed facility.
The National Theatre came alive and played host to the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, the hierarchy of the National Assembly, and other members of the Federal Executive Council. The president highlighted the role of the historic edifice in promoting the nation's cultural heritage in Festac 77. He urged Nigerians to remain steadfast in projecting the nation in positive light at all times.
Something that is very, very important to me, to you, as government and Nigeria in diaspora. That is, stop talking about Nigeria in an ill, negative tone. This is a country of very proud people. We know what we are. It might not be because of education. There are a lot of educated relics around the world. It's about ourselves believing something we inherited from our parents and great forebearers. A nation of brave people, confidence, and dedicated. Let's build it together. Every christening, if you have a bad dream, forget it. This country will succeed.
The National Theatre, now named after the famous Nobel laureate Professor Wole Soyinka, is now called the Wole Soyinka Center for Culture and Creative Arts.
I remember this building when it was first erected during a military regime. I think we called it the General's Hat because of the shape of the roof. There's, of course, in the conception, very little of what I call the African architectural intelligence.
Lagos State is proud to have been a key stakeholder and a partner in this project, and we have demonstrated it in every concrete way.
This theatre is the virtue, the ideal of every single Nigerian. It is only fitting that this landmark now bears the name of Professor Wole Soyinka, our Nobel laureate and eternal storyteller.
The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria appreciated the contributions of the private sector in injecting about 68 billion naira towards the realization of the project. He highlighted the immense impact of the National Theatre towards deepening revenue earnings in the creative sector.
It is a treasure we must all protect and nurture so that it never again falls into disuse. Let it stand as a beacon of creativity, innovation, and unity for decades to come.
Several theatrical performances to commemorate the rebirth of the national edifice were on display. In Lagos, Amaka O, NTA News.
Vice President Kashim Shettima has returned to Abuja after representing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York and strategic engagements in Germany. During the week-long international engagement, the Vice President delivered President Tinubu's national statement calling for comprehensive UN reforms, championed Africa's sovereignties over its $700 billion mineral resources, and strengthened strategic partnerships with the United Kingdom, Gates Foundation, and other international stakeholders. Shettima also met with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and secured his commendation for Nigeria's bid for a permanent Security Council seat, and in another engagement showcased the country's $200 billion energy transition opportunity to global investors. He also assured the Nigerian diaspora community of robust engagement in the President Tinubu administration policies and programs before his engagements in Germany. Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu has launched the nationwide distribution of sanitary pads to 370,000 schoolgirls across the nation. The national launch of the Flow with Confidence initiative in Gombe State at the cost of 2.5 billion naira is to provide pads to young schoolgirls, especially in rural communities. Each state is expected to receive 10,000 sanitary pads on behalf of the schoolgirls.
This program depends on all of us. I want to especially appeal to the executive chairmen of local government areas, given your critical position as the arm of the government closest to the people and your role in delivering essential services. It is crucial that you take ownership of this intervention, scale up, and ensure that these supplies get directly to deserving girls in rural communities.
And again, Nigeria's First Lady Oluremi Tinubu has been conferred with the traditional title of Saraunier Yaki, the Queen Warrior of Akko Emirate in Gombe State. The honor, in recognition of her passion for defending the interests of the weak across the nation, was conferred on her by the Lamido Akko Alhaji Umar Muhammad Atiku during her two-day working visit to the state. Acknowledging the recognition, the First Lady pledged to sustain her intervention for the girl child and further enlisted the support of traditional rulers in the state to drive her advocacy. Her conferment ceremony was witnessed by the State Governor Mohammed Inuwa Yahaya and the Chief Whip of the House of Representatives Usman Bello Kumo while in the state. The First Lady will perform the national launch of the Renewed Hope Initiative Flow with Confidence, a vital menstrual health intervention for schoolgirls. And Nigeria has reaffirmed her commitment to creating a transparent, stable, and investor-friendly petroleum sector. This is the highlight of President Bola Tinubu's keynote message to the Africa Energy Week in Cape Town, South Africa, presented by Minister of State Petroleum Resources Oil, Henneken Lokobiri. Lydia Sampson reports.
The minister declared that Nigeria is open for business and actively pursuing policies that prioritize investment, efficiency, and long-term growth in the oil sector. Describing the gathering as a call to action, Lokobiri reiterates that Nigeria is ready not just to participate in the global energy market, but to lead reform and growth on the African continent.
When this government came, the number of rigs were barely about 14, but today the number of rigs working in Nigeria are about 50. And we hope to, increase this number significantly before the end of the year. These are signs that the reforms are working, the idle assets have been activated, and existing ones are being optimized. These are concrete, measurable results that send strong signal to investors. Nigeria is offering certainty, policy transparency, incentives, and large-scale opportunities.
Senator Lokobiri outlined bold policy measures implemented under President Tinubu's administration, reinforcing the Petroleum Industry Act in providing a clear and predictable fiscal and regulatory environment for investors, making Nigeria prioritizing legal, regulatory, financial, and structural transformation. To this effect, Nigeria's upstream sector is already recovering with the Project 1 Million Barrels initiative launched in October 2024, raising daily crude oil production to over 1.7 million barrels per day. Additionally, the number of active drilling rigs has grown from 31 in January to 50 by July 2025, a clear signal that reforms are unlocking value across the sector. He urged the continent to retain more value from its hydrocarbon resources by focusing on infrastructure, industrial development, and localized value chains. He noted that Africa spends over $120 billion annually on hydrocarbons, largely through import, calling it a missed opportunity for economic transformation. In Abuja, Lydia Sampson, NTA News.
And talking electoral matters now, INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu has appealed to the National Assembly to expedite action on the amendment of the 2022 Electoral Act to enable the Commission come up with guidelines for the 2027 general election. He made the appeal while receiving a delegation of the European Union Election Observation Mission at the Commission's headquarters in Abuja.
The Commission has carefully considered all the 8 recommendations specifically addressed to us in your report. Action has been taken on aspects of the recommendations that only require administrative action to implement. Similarly, action is being taken on cross-cutting recommendations that require collective action between INEC and other bodies and stakeholders, while waiting for the conclusion of the ongoing legal review by the National Assembly on the recommendations that require legislative intervention.
What we are here to do is to look at the recommendations that flowed from the overall mission that were contained in the final report of the mission back in 2023. And we are very happy to see that there has been very significant progress against these recommendations. We recognize that there are certain time constraints, both in terms of judicial reform as well as administrative reform and, of course, constitutional reform, which is
that out of the 38 recommendations made by the EU in the 2023 general election, 8 were within the jurisdiction of the INEC and they have been implemented, while 30 need legislative consideration. You're watching the news on NTA International. We'll take a short break now. More reports right after. Staying tuned and now to judiciary matters. The Federal High Court in Abuja has dismissed a suit instituted against President Bola Tinubu challenging the March 18, 2025 proclamation of state of emergency in Rivers State. The presiding judge, Justice James Omotosho, gave the order in a matter filed by Belema Briggs and 4 others in Abuja. Justice Omotosho held that the 5 plaintiffs lacked the legal power to institute the case as they suffered no legal wrong in the matter. The court held that such case as constituted can only be determined by the Supreme Court only. The court held that none of the 5 plaintiffs claimed to be members of the State Executive Council, members of the House of Assembly, or suffered any injury greater than the rest of the people of Rivers State. Worse still, the court held that none of the plaintiffs claimed to have the fiat of the Attorney General of the state to initiate the case. Besides, Justice Omotosho said that the claim of President Tinubu that he imposed state of emergency to avoid looming breakdown of law and order was not challenged or disputed by the plaintiffs. Justice Omotosho held that the claim of breach to fundamental rights by the plaintiffs by President Tinubu did not hold water because the appropriate law on emergency rule order was invoked by President Tinubu to save unpleasant situation. Justice Omotosho said the case was frivolous and baseless because the mandate of other people of Rivers was not obtained before instituting it on their behalf. And President of the Republic of Cape Verde, Jose Maria Pereira, says with the emerging global conflicts, Africa as a continent needs to set an inclusive agenda to strengthen ties that must address challenges. He was speaking at the commencement of the 2025-2026 legal year of the ECOWAS Court of Justice in Abuja. Judiciary correspondent Austin Anyebe reports.
The president of Cape Verde, who was the special guest at the event, calls for an inclusive agenda that carries the big and small countries along in the affairs of the continent. ECOWAS Court of Justice, he said, has a greater role to play in ensuring that fundamental human rights are respected, as Africa will not be respected globally if political authorities refuse to enforce the rule of law.
With such challenges, The ECOWAS Court of Justice must assert
We go to Malawi, where the country is facing a severe economic crisis marked by high inflation, food insecurity, and a persistent shortage of foreign currency. The country's new administration has a huge task to overcome in order to grow the economy beyond the 2% forecast by the World Bank. With basic essentials becoming increasingly unaffordable, many in the country are hoping that the tide will soon turn economically.
Malawi's elections may have centered around a number of issues plaguing the country, but growing the stagnating economy remained the number one issue. The increase in the cost of living is piling on economic hardship for many Malawians, and a series of natural disasters have also played a negative role. Economists estimate that more than 70% of Malawians live below the World Bank's latest international poverty line of $3 per person per day, and it's a figure many want to see change.
We can say that Malawi was better off under Peter Mutharika and the Democratic Progressive Party than we are now. If you go to the village, the sentiments are the same. If you go in town, the sentiments are the same. So we are really in the dire straits, and we need to make sure that we get another lane which we can follow if we are to be compensated with our worries and the depression that we have suffered economically.
With the chronic shortage of foreign currency in the country, Malawi recently banned imports in order to maintain its reserves and boost the local manufacturing sector. That, though, has done very little to assist some businesses who rely on cross-border trade and need access to a steady flow of foreign currency to operate sustainably.
The business of selling cars has been very difficult this year because of shortage of forex at the banks. All these cars you see here, we bought them using foreign currency from the black market. Each time we went to the bank, there was no forex. We should not buy it from the black market.
For now, the high inflation levels have seen the prices of many goods skyrocket and largely become unaffordable to many Malawians, and it's a pressing issue that needs urgent attention.
France has pledged readiness to upscale her relation with Nigeria in the area of media and broadcasting for proper propagation of the good works of governments of both countries. The French ambassador to Nigeria, Marc Fombostier, disclosed this after a meeting with management of Voice of Nigeria VON at the embassy in Abuja. Chukunonso Nwaweze has the details.
Beyond French being one of the 8 broadcast languages of Voice of Nigeria, the Director General Jibri Babandache said his visit is to leverage the existing cordial relationship between France and Nigeria to further reposition the agency to be in the lead in shaping positive narratives about the two countries.
For us at the Voice of Nigeria, French is not in the fringes. It's a top priority. We want to deepen it. We want to ensure that we work closely with the embassy in terms of content production, content sharing with public broadcast institutions in France, and also to work together in capacity building.
Ambassador Marc Fombostier expressed readiness to facilitate the building of a stronger and more efficient partnership between Voice of Nigeria and French media outlets.
We will ensure that we can scale up, and so you can trust me, the French team, public broadcast companies, the French embassy, will be all of us along with you to scale up the partnership as agreed between the two presidents.
Ambassador Fombostier also commended the level of professionalism and inclusivity being exhibited at Voice of Nigeria through its various platforms. Chukunonso Nwaweze, NTN News.
President Tinubu congratulates the management and staff of Crystal Laurel Limited on the 35th anniversary of the leading indigenous elevator company. Crystal Laurel Limited is a major player in elevators and escalators with headquarters in Lagos, branches in Abuja, Port Harcourt, Uyo, and a zonal office in Ibadan. A statement by the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, President Tinubu commends Crystal Laurel for its enterprise discipline, noting that its longevity could only have come from resilience, effective management, and sound business practices. And that's where we end the news. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I am Frama Pani, and Bamidele John has been the sign language interpreter. Bye for now.